Hook script. Imagine walking into a room filled with the city's wealthiest elite. But instead of being welcomed, you're laughed at, mocked, and treated like you don't belong. That's exactly what happened to one woman, dressed in a simple gown and carrying a modest handbag. What the guests didn't know was that she owned the very hotel they were standing in, and held the power to destroy or rebuild every fortune in that ballroom. What happens next will leave them speechless, and make you question everything you thought you knew about power and respect. Stick around, because this story takes a shocking turn you won't see coming. The ballroom glimmered with golden chandeliers. Crystal glasses clinked, and laughter echoed through the air. Every guest wore designer gowns and tailored suits, their jewelry flashing like tiny stars. In the midst of the glamour, a woman stood, quietly by the entrance. Her dress was plain, her shoes were simple, her hair was tied back neatly, without a single jewel or accessory. She held a small handbag, old but clean, and her hands rested calmly in front of her. Eyes turned toward her, whispers spread through the crowd like ripples across water. Who invited her? Someone murmured. She looks so ordinary. Another voice sneered softly. A group of wealthy guests, dressed in silk and velvet, approached her with smirks. One of them, a tall man with a diamond-encrusted watch, tilted his head and smiled coldly. "Are you lost, madam?" he asked. The woman's eyes met his calmly. "No," she said softly, her voice steady but gentle. The group chuckled. "Interesting choice of attire," another woman said, her lips curling as she glanced at the simple handbag. The woman said nothing, her gaze shifting around the ballroom. She noticed the gleaming marble floors, the extravagant decorations, and the faces filled with pride. The laughter grew louder. Someone offered her a glass of champagne. But the offer was more mockery than kindness. The woman declined politely. A few more guests gathered. Drawn by the whispers and the spectacle of her presence, "She looks like she walked in from the street," one man said in a voice loud enough for her to hear. The woman's posture did not change. She felt the heat of the stairs pressing down on her, but her calm expression never faltered. The host of the party, a middle-aged man in a sharp suit, finally approached her. He offered a polite smile, though his tone carried a hint of irritation. "May I ask who invited you?" he said. The woman looked him directly in the eye. "You did," she replied. The man blinked in confusion. "I invited you." "Yes," she said simply. The crowd exchanged puzzled glances. The man cleared his throat. I am not sure I understand." Woman's lips curved into the faintest smile. "You sent the invitation," she said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out an envelope, its thick paper embossed with gold lettering. The host stared at it, his smile faltering. "That is indeed from me," he admitted slowly. The crowd murmured, curiosity beginning to replace mockery. The woman's hand brushed against her bag again, this time pulling out a small black card. It gleamed under the chandelier's light. Several guests gasped quietly. It was a private banking card, one reserved for the world's wealthiest individuals. The room grew still. The woman's calm voice carried across the silence. "I received your invitation after my acquisition of this hotel chain," she said. Gasps erupted from the guests. The host's jaw dropped slightly. "You own this hotel?" "Yes," she said, and several others. The once mocking guests exchanged wide-eyed stares. The woman took a step forward, her soft heels clicking against the marble. "I do not usually attend parties like this," she continued, "but I thought I would see what kind of company you keep." The silence grew heavier. Faces that had once been full of arrogance now shifted into expressions of discomfort. One woman's hand trembled slightly as she lowered her champagne glass. The tall man with the diamond-encrusted watch looked away, his smirk gone. The woman's gaze swept across them all. Calm but piercing, she noticed their stiffened postures, their forced smiles, her unease as they realized the truth. The atmosphere of laughter and arrogance had vanished, replaced by tension so thick it felt like a curtain draped over the ballroom. Host swallowed hard, trying to regain composure. "Madam?" I had no idea. I know, she said softly. Her voice carried no anger, only quiet authority. You judged me before you knew me. No one spoke. The chandeliers seemed to glow even brighter in the silence, every sparkle of light reflecting the embarrassment etched on their faces. The woman turned her attention to the group that had mocked her earlier. Each one shifted uncomfortably. Under her calm stare, she could see their discomfort, their regret, their fear of what her presence now meant. She took another step forward, her presence commanding without a single raised voice. Their laughter had disappeared completely. Their pride had shattered. Like glass, she could feel their discomfort, lingering in the air, as heavy as the scent of expensive perfume that filled the ballroom. Would you like me to keep building tension until the shocking twist fully unfolds? Asterisk, the woman's calm gaze moved across the entire ballroom. The once sparkling atmosphere now felt cold and heavy. People shifted nervously, adjusting their jewelry and smoothing their clothes as if to regain dignity. She could feel their unease, see the cracks forming in their carefully crafted facades. The host, now pale, gave a nervous laugh that fell flat. Perhaps we should move to the dining area, he suggested, his voice unsteady. No one moved. All eyes remained fixed on her. The woman walked forward with slow, deliberate steps. Each heel click echoed through the room like a warning. I am not here for dinner, she said softly. The crowd stirred, whispering again. But their voices carried none of the earlier arrogance. I came to see how people behave when they think no one is watching, she continued. Her words lingered in the air like a chill. You have shown me. The tall man with the diamond-crusted watch stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly. I apologize, madame. We did not mean. She raised a hand, silencing him. I am not interested in excuses, she said. Her eyes locked on his, and he immediately lowered his gaze. She could see shame creeping over his features, and it only deepened as she turned her attention to the others. Each guest who had mocked her now stared at the floor. Avoiding her piercing gaze, the woman reached into her bag once more. Pulling out a sleek black notebook, she flipped it open, scanning its pages briefly before speaking again. I recognize some of you, she said quietly. Heads turned sharply. In her direction, I have seen your names in acquisition reports, loan requests, business proposals. Oh! A ripple of unease spread through the group. You sit here laughing, yet some of you owe me more than you realize. Gas broke out. Among the guests, several faces turned pale. The host swallowed hard, his hands clasping together nervously. Madam, please, if we have offended you. She closed the notebook with a soft snap. You have, she said calmly. The words hit harder than if she had shouted. The silence that followed was suffocating. The woman stepped toward a massive floor-to-ceiling window. The city lights stretched endlessly outside, glowing against the night sky. She stood with her back to the guests, her voice soft but commanding. I built my life quietly. I have no need to prove myself to anyone. But tonight I see that wealth and power mean nothing when character is rotten. Her words hung heavy in the room, cutting deeper than any insult. The guests exchanged nervous glances. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others looked as if they wanted to disappear. She turned around, her calm expression sharper now, like steel wrapped in silk. The tension in the room grew unbearable. Several guests were holding their breath. Afraid to speak, she began walking toward the exit, her simple dress flowing behind her. Each step felt like a judgment. Every movement reminded them that the woman they mocked was the one who could buy and sell everything they owned. When she reached the door, she paused and looked back over her. Shouldered, her gaze was cold, but her voice was steady. I will remember this night. The words struck like lightning. A few guests flinched, as if the statement carried more weight than they could bear. The woman left the ballroom, her quiet footsteps fading into the corridor. Inside, the guests stood frozen, the weight of their shame pressing down like a storm. The once grand party now felt like a cage. The chandeliers still sparkled above them, but their beauty felt empty. Would you like me to now write the part where she delivers a final, game-changing blow that makes them truly regret mocking her? Outside the ballroom, hallway was quiet. The soft carpet muffled her footsteps as she walked with unshaken grace. Behind her, the murmurs of the crowd began to rise, whispers laced with panic and shame. She stopped at a tall window overlooking the glittering city skyline. Her reflection stared back at her, calm, collected, powerful. For a moment, she breathed deeply, allowing the cool air from the vents to steady her thoughts. She reached into her handbag once more and pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved swiftly across the screen, sending a single message. It was brief, sharp, and decisive. Within minutes, staff members dressed in immaculate uniforms began to move through the ballroom. The guests inside froze as a team of executives, assistants, and security personnel entered the room. Their polished shoes clicked on the marble, and their faces carried a look of quiet authority. A man in a black suit approached the host. Handing him a sealed envelope, he opened it with trembling fingers, his expression turning ashen. The guests watched in confusion. The host's hand shook as he read aloud, his voice cracking slightly, effective immediately. This property is now under the direct ownership of her name. Gasps erupted through the ballroom. Heads snapped toward the door where she had just stood moments ago. She owns this place, someone whispered, disbelief dripping from there. Voice dot. Another staff member spoke firmly. Adam has instructed that all guests be treated with courtesy. But those found disrespectful tonight will have their business accounts reviewed. The room fell silent, the weight of those words sinking deep. Several guests exchanged terrified glances. One man's face drained of all color as he realized his company was under her bank's loan program. A woman clutched her diamond necklace, her fingers trembling as she remembered a failed proposal she had sent to one of her subsidiaries. The tall man with the diamond-encrusted watch sank into a nearby chair, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. The air in the ballroom was thick with dread, the once playful music now sounding haunting in the background. Meanwhile, she stood calmly at the far end of the hall, speaking softly to one of her assistants. Her voice was composed, but her words carried quiet authority. "Send out a notice to the board," she said. "I want a full review of every company represented here tonight. No exceptions." The assistant nodded and hurried away, their pace quick and urgent. The woman glanced once more through the glass window at the ballroom. Inside, the same people who had mocked her just an hour ago were now pale and restless, their pride crumbling. Under the weight of their fear, some tried to leave discreetly. But security at the exits made it clear that no one was going anywhere until she allowed it. She turned to her personal driver, who stood ready nearby. "Prepare the car," she said softly. He nodded and stepped away. She lingered for just a moment longer, her sharp gaze sweeping over the chaotic scene unfolding in the ballroom. And then she stepped forward, walking back into the room she had just left. All heads turned instantly. Every conversation stopped. The clinking of glasses ceased. Her presence alone silenced the room. Would you like me to now write the shocking confrontation scene where she finally addresses them all directly, revealing just how deep her influence runs? Asterisk. She stepped back into the ballroom with calm, measured grace. The soft click of her heels echoed louder than the music. Every guest turned toward her, their faces pale, their bodies stiff. The room that once brimmed with laughter now felt like a courtroom awaiting judgment. She walked to the center of the marble floor and stopped, her posture straight, her hands resting gently at her sides. No one dared to speak. She scanned the faces around her, the same faces that had sneered at her moments ago, the same faces now filled with fear. Her voice was calm but sharp, carrying effortlessly across the silent room. "When I walked in tonight," she began, "I was invisible to you." Her eyes swept over them like a blade. You saw a plain woman, someone who did not belong. Several guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "You mocked me, laughed at me, judged me without a single thought." Her tone remained soft, but every word struck like a hammer. She let the silence stretch, letting them sit with asterisk rippled. Through the crowd, though many already knew, she took a slow step forward, her gaze unwavering, and 5 others in this city. She said, "A few guests inhaled sharply, along with the chain of restaurants that served your meals tonight." Whispers began to spread like wildfire, but they quieted as soon as she lifted her hand. Her eyes locked onto the tall man with the diamond-encrusted watch. "You laughed the loudest," she said softly. His throat bobbed as he swallowed his confidence. "Gone. I also happen to own the majority shares of the company you work for." His face turned white. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, a mix of disbelief and fear. She turned her gaze to the woman with the diamond necklace, who sat frozen in her chair. "You run a fashion brand?" she said calmly. The woman's eyes widened. "I am the silent investor who saved it from bankruptcy last year." The woman's mouth opened slightly, but no words came. The simple woman, who now seemed anything but, took another step forward. Her presence filled the room. Every movement precise, every word deliberate. "Each of you came here tonight to display wealth," she continued. "But wealth does not impress me. Character does." The chandeliers glittered above, their light catching the tension in every guest's face. She took a deep breath, her calm demeanor unshaken. "When I arrived, you showed me arrogance, cruelty, pride." The words landed heavy, like stones in water. A man in the corner shifted uncomfortably, his head bowed. The music had been turned off completely now, leaving only the sound of her voice. "I built my life quietly," she said. "I have seen thee. Faces of hunger and poverty. I have seen people who would give their last meal to a stranger. And tonight I saw people with everything, yet nothing." Her words pierced deeper than anger ever could. Several guests lowered their heads, unable to meet her gaze. She paused, her eyes sweeping over the crowd one final time. "Tomorrow morning, I will be meeting with the boards of several companies represented here. Many of you will find your influence reduced." The statement sent a wave of panic through the room. A man audibly gasped. A woman's hand trembled as she clutched her glass. But the woman stood tall, calm, unbothered by their fear. She turned toward the host, who stood frozen at her side. "Your staff has been polite," she said gently. "They will be rewarded." The host nodded quickly, relief washing over his face. She turned back to the crowd. "Thank you for inviting me," she said, her tone cool and deliberate. Tonight was illuminating. And with that, she began walking toward the exit again, her simple dress swaying lightly as if mocking the glittering gowns around her. Every eye followed her. "No," one dared to speak. "Would you like me to continue until she delivers a final, devastating gesture that seals her power over them all?" As she reached the towering double doors, 2 security guards stepped forward and held them open. The ballroom remained frozen, every guest staring in uneasy silence. But she paused before stepping out. Slowly, she turned back to face them all. Her gaze was steady, calm, but laced with an authority that sent shivers down spines. "I will not remember your names," she said softly, "but I will remember your faces." The words sent a visible ripple of fear through the room. Several guests flinched. Some lowered their eyes entirely, ashamed to meet her stare. "I built my empire not by chance, but by choice," she continued, "and I choose who I allow in my world. Tonight, you all chose for me." The tension in the ballroom was suffocating now, pressing on every shoulder like a weight too heavy to bear. She signaled to one of her assistants, a sharp-looking woman in a black suit who stepped forward carrying a sleek silver folder. "Place it on the table," she instructed. The assistant obeyed, setting the folder in the center of the ballroom's largest table before stepping back. All eyes turned to it, curiosity battling with fear. "This," the woman said, "is a list of those whose companies I will personally review in the coming weeks." A loud gasp echoed through the room. A man sitting near the front reached for his wife's hand, his face pale. "And this," she added, gesturing to another smaller folder that her assistant held, "is a list of those who will be receiving opportunities instead. Whispers rippled through the ballroom like a storm sweeping through leaves. Some guests sat straighter, desperate to see if they might be on the second list. Others slumped lower in their chairs. Terrified of being on the first, she let them stew. In silence for a long moment, her expression calm but unreadable. Then she took a step back, toward the doors, her presence towering over them, without a single raised voice. "I did not come here to humiliate anyone," she said finally. "I came to see who you really are." The chandelier sparkled above like judgmental eyes, reflecting the tension in the room. "Now," she said softly, "you have shown me everything I needed to know." With that, she turned and stepped through the open doors. The sound of her heels faded into the hallway. Inside the ballroom, no one moved. It was as if the entire party had been turned to stone. Some guests exchanged fearful glances. Others sat completely still, knowing their fates had been sealed with their own arrogance. "Would you like me to now write the part where she makes one last shocking power move before leaving the hotel entirely?" Asterisk as she walked down the grand hallway. Her quiet footsteps echoed against the polished marble floors. Staff members bowed their heads as she passed, their respect silent but clear. Outside, her sleek black car waited, gleaming beneath the soft glow of the entrance lights. She paused for a moment at the doors, glancing back toward the ballroom. Through the glass, she could see the once proud guests sitting in stiff silence, their expensive jewels and gowns now looking like costumes rather than symbols of power. She stepped into the cool night air. The faint hum of the city in the distance. Her driver opened the car door, and she slid into the plush leather seat with graceful ease. The door closed softly behind her, shutting out the tension of the ballroom completely. Inside the car, she pulled out her phone and sent one final message to her assistant: "Release the list." Moments later, across the city, emails and notifications began to ping in offices and boardrooms. Some contained offers of investment and partnership. Others carried notices of audits and immediate reviews. Power shifted silently that night, like a tide changing course. As her car pulled away from the Grand Hotel, she looked out the window at the glittering skyline. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass, calm, composed, untouchable. She had entered the ballroom as a woman. To be mocked, she left it as a legend they would never forget. And in their world of vanity and greed, her name would now be spoken with both awe and fear. The city lights blurred past as the car disappeared into the night, carrying her back to the empire she had built with her own hands. She never looked back. They would remember her forever.